Good morning, everyone. My name is Arpan Banerjee. I am a doctoral fellow at the Department of East Asian Studies, University of Delhi, and academic counselor here at Ignou. And I have been teaching you the paper Social Policies and Administration. And the code of this paper is BPAE-144. So I welcome you all to today's learning session, and let us begin today's class. So far in this paper, we have discussed the block 1 of this paper, which was pertaining to social policy and administration and introduction. So in that, we had done the first unit, which was pertaining to social policy, concept, characteristics, objectives, scope, functions, principles, and models. And the second unit of this paper was pertaining to social policy and administration. The second block, which we had started in the last class, it is pertaining to social policies and sustainable development goals in the public sector. And as part of that, we had discussed the third unit of this paper in the previous class, which is pertaining to poverty alleviation, which also is the Sustainable Development Goal 1, that is end poverty in all its forms everywhere. So we had discussed the different measures that have been taken in India to alleviate poverty, and the different indicators and the different guidelines and the different frameworks which have been used, not only to eliminate poverty, but also to estimate poverty as well. So those things we had discussed in the last class. So in today's class, we shall be discussing the fourth unit of this paper, which is pertaining to food security. So food security, it is related to Sustainable Development Goal 2. Since this unit of ours is pertaining to social policies and sustainable development goals in the social sector, the fourth unit is basically related to Sustainable Development Goal 2. So these sustainable development goals, they were adopted in the Paris Climate Summit in 2015, and they became effective from there on. So the target is to fulfill them by 2030, and these sustainable goals, they succeeded the Millennium Development Goals, which were brought into effect in 2000. So after 15 years, those Millennium Development Goals were succeeded by Sustainable Development Goals, and they will be for the next 15 years, that is from 2015 to 2030. So for the next 6 years. So this fourth unit that we are going to do, which is food security, it is pertaining to Sustainable Development Goal 2, that is end hunger in all its forms everywhere, achieve food security and improve nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture. So that is the second Sustainable Development Goal, and our fourth unit is related to that. So we'll do that in today's class, and after that we will do the fifth unit. So the fifth unit is education, which is related to Sustainable Development Goal 4. That is ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. So these two units we shall be doing today, which are pertaining to Sustainable Development Goal 2 and Sustainable Development Goal 4. So without any delay, let us begin today's class by discussing the fourth unit, that is food security. So we all know that the right to food and its variation, it is a human right, protecting the right of the people to feed themselves in dignity, implying that sufficient food is available, that people have the means to access food, and that it adequately meets the individual's dietary needs as well. So the right to food, it protects the right of all human beings to be free from hunger, food insecurity, and malnutrition. So the right to food, it does not imply that governments have an obligation to hand out free food to everyone who wants it, or a right to be fed. However, if people are deprived of access to food for reasons beyond their control, for example, because they are in detention in times of war or after natural disasters, the right requires the government to provide food directly. So this right to food is derived from the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. So this International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, or the ICESCR, it has 170 states which are party to it as of April 2020. So this right to food is derived from this International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. And also in our Constitution, Article 47, which is a part of the directive principles of state policy, it says that it is the duty of the state to improve the condition of healthcare and to raise the standard of nutrition of the citizens, and also to ban toxic substances except for medicinal purposes. So intoxicating substances except for medicinal purposes. So the state has been entrusted with the responsibility by our constitution to raise the level of nutrition of the fellow citizens. And also Article 48 of the Constitution, it further entrusts the state with another responsibility. It says that the state has to organize agricultural animal husbandry on modern and scientific lines. So that is also very much related to food security, because food production is very much relating to our country, in our country, to agriculture. Across the world, food production is related to agriculture. So Article 48, it entrusts the state with the responsibility of organizing agriculture and animal husbandry on modern and scientific lines. And Article 47, it says that the state has a responsibility to raise the levels of nutrition of its fellow citizens. And also Article 41, it entrusts the state with another responsibility. It says that it is the responsibility of the state to look after people who are because of certain deprivation or because of certain disease, certain handicap, are not able to feed themselves or are not able to sustain themselves. So right to sustenance is also guaranteed by Article 41, right? And Article 39 also talks about it. We have the right to food. Although it is not explicitly mentioned in the Constitution, the word right to food, like right to education, is explicitly mentioned now in Article 21A, which was inserted by the 86th Amendment in 2002. The right to education is now a fundamental right between the age of 6 and 14 years. But right to food is not yet a fundamental right, but the articles that I've just discussed, that is Article 41, Article 47 and Article 48, we get certain aspects which are related to right to food and which entrust the government or the state to ensure the food security of its fellow citizens. So states that sign the covenant, so we have just discussed the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, from which the right to food is derived. So states that sign this covenant, they agree to take steps to the maximum of their available resources to achieve progressively the full realization of the right to adequate food, both nationally as well as internationally. So the Food Corporation of India, it was established in 1965 for the purpose of procurement, storage and distribution of food grains. So after independence, we were not sustainable. We were not self-sufficient. We were not self-sufficient in the area of food security, in the area of food production. There were widespread famine-like conditions in many parts of India because, of course, partition and the 200 years of British colonial rule, it had wreaked havoc across the country, and it had the condition of the peasants was they were in extreme dire straits. It was extremely dire, the condition of the peasants across the country. It was not at all good. And so right after partition, and we see that the partition also, it wreaked havoc on the peasants, especially in the frontier provinces. And we see that after independence, India in terms of food security was not self-sufficient in terms of food grains production as well. So there came a situation that to satisfy the food security the food grain requirement of the population and to prevent and to stop conditions of famine from recurring, India had to import food grains from America, from United States of America. India had to import rice, such and wheat as well. So because India was not self-sufficient at that time, but now the situation is such that we have surplus food grains, millions of tons of surplus which are being stored in the Food Corporation of India storehouses. So much that we are now helping out those countries which are facing crisis of food security. Recently, we helped Afghanistan in fighting its food security crisis. So now we are exporting food grains. But there was a time when we had to import food grains for our own survival. But the Green Revolution, it changed the entire scenario. So the HYV seeds that were used, they yielded a lot of, huge returns, and the food grain production, it reached an all-time high. Although there were drawbacks of that as well, which we are now feeling, which we are now realizing, the excessive use of fertilizers and also excessive irrigation. It led to the lowering of groundwater levels. So groundwater levels have reduced by 22 times from 1996 to 2016. So all these things are the side effects. But of course, food grain production, it increased massively in India as a result of the Green Revolution. And in the Green Revolution as well, we imported these HYV seeds, which were created by Norman Borlaug, who later on went on to win the Nobel Prize as well. So that helped us to increase our food production, the Green Revolution, and not only become self-sufficient in terms of food production and food security, but now we are also exporting food grains to countries which are in need. Especially recently we did that to Afghanistan. So the Food Corporation of India, which was established in 1965 for the purpose of procurement, storage and distribution of food grains, it has been playing a major role in the food security of India by ensuring that all the people of India, they are free from hunger and malnutrition. So the National Food Security Act of 2013, it converts into legal entitlements for existing food security programs of the Government of India, and it includes the midday meal scheme, the Integrated Child Development Services Scheme or ICDS, and the public distribution scheme. And it also includes issues of buffer stock and food security as well. They are comprehensively covered. And also the objectives, functioning, limitations and revamping of the public distribution system, that is also comprehensively covered by the National Food Security Act. And the One Nation, One Ration Card scheme that has been introduced recently by the government, that has further enhanced the food security of the citizens of the country. So in 2017-18, over rupees 1,500 billion, which is 7.6% of government's total expenditure, has been allocated to provide food subsidies under Targeted Public Distribution System or TPDS. So in this unit today, that is Unit 4, we will begin the discussion with the National Food Security Act of 2013. So let us discuss some of the salient features of this National Food Security Act of 2013. So the first is coverage and entitlement under Targeted Public Distribution System. So up to 79.56 79.56% of the rural population and 64.43% of urban population will be covered under the Targeted Public Distribution System with uniform entitlement of 5 kg of items per person per month. However, since the Antyodaya Anna Yojana AAY households, they constitute the poorest of the poor, and they are presently entitled to 35 kg per household per month. Entitlement of existing Antyodaya Anna Yojana households will be protected at 35 kg per household per month. Also, another salient feature of the National Food Security Act of 2013 is state-wise coverage. So, corresponding to the all India coverage of 75% and 50% in the rural and urban areas, state-wise coverage will be determined by the central government. And another feature of the National Food Security Act of 2013 is subsidized prices under targeted public distribution system and their revision. So food grains under the TPDS, they will be made available at subsidized prices of rupees 3, rupees 2 and rupees 1 per kg for rice, wheat and coarse grains respectively for a period of 3 years from the date of commencement of the National Food Security Act. Thereafter, prices will be suitably linked to the minimum support price. Now, another salient feature is regarding identification of households. So, within the coverage under targeted public distribution system determined for each state, the work of identification of eligible households is to be done by the respective states and union territories. So, another salient feature of the National Food Security Act is pertaining to nutritional support to women and children. So, pregnant women and lactating mothers and children in the age group of 6 months to 14 years, they will be entitled to meals as prescribed in the nutritional norms under the Integrated Child Development Services or ICDS and midday meal schemes. So, higher nutritional norms, they have been prescribed for malnourished children up to 6 years of age. Another salient feature of the National Food Security Act, which is related to Article 42 of the Constitution of India, which is a part of directive principles of the state policy. So, Article 42, it talks about maternity relief, right? So, in line with Article 42, in this upholding the spirit of Article 42 of the Constitution of India, which is a part of directive principles of state policy, this according to the National Food Security Act of 2013, pregnant women and lactating mothers will also be entitled to receive maternity benefit of not less than rupees 6,000 per month. And another salient feature of the National Food Security Act of 2013 is pertaining to women empowerment. So, eldest women of the household who is of 18 years of age and above will be the head of the household for the purpose of issuing of ration cards. And another salient feature is of the National Food Security Act of 2013 is pertaining to the grievance redressal mechanism. Now, grievance redressal mechanism at the district and state levels, where states will have the flexibility to use the existing machinery or set up separate mechanisms. So, grievance redressal mechanism has also been ensured, has also been created at the state level. And another significant salient feature of the National Food Security Act of 2013 is pertaining to the cost of intra-state transportation and handling of food grains and fair price shop dealers margin. So, the central government will provide assistance to states in meeting the expenditure that is incurred by them on transportation of food grains within the state and in its handling of fair price shop dealers margin as well as per norms to be devised for this purpose. So this act, it also upholds transparency and accountability. So provisions have been made for disclosure of records relating to public distribution system and having social audits and setting up of vigilance committees in order to ensure transparency and accountability. So the next salient feature of the National Food Security Act of 2013 is pertaining to food security allowance. So provision for food security allowance to entitled beneficiaries in case of non-supply of entitled food grains or meals has also been ensured under this National Food Security Act of 2013. And also there is a provision for penalty as well on public servants or authority, which is to be imposed by the State Food Commission in case of failure to comply with the relief to be provided. So it's a very comprehensive act, the National Food Security Act of 2013. Now, if we talk about food security, India, it ranks 74 out of 113 major countries in terms of the food security index. And though the available nutritional standard is 100% of the requirement, India lags far behind in terms of quality protein at 20%, which needs to be tackled. But no provision is made up in the Act to subsidize the protein-rich food products such as eggs, meat, fish, chicken, etc. So India needs to concentrate on methods to improve the availability and affordability of protein-rich food products using the latest technology without the need of additional land and water. So biogas or natural gas or methane product produced from farm agro crop domestic waste can also be used. So in addition, protein-rich cattle, fish, poultry and pet animal feed can be done economically by cultivating Methylococcus capsulatus bacteria culture near to the rural consumption areas with tiny land and water footprint. So that will also help in tackling climate change as well and in reducing the carbon footprint as well. Now, if we talk about the public distribution system, so food security, it refers to ensuring adequate food supply to the people, especially those who are deprived of basic nutrition. And food security, it has been a major concern in India. So, according to UN India, there are nearly 195 million undernourished people in India, which is a quarter of the world's hunger burden. So, also, roughly 43% children in India are chronically undernourished, and India ranks 71 out of 113 major countries in terms of the Food Security Index of 2021. So now another aspect is pertaining to the center state responsibilities. So the central and state governments, they share the responsibility of regulating the public distribution system. And while the central government is responsible for procurement and storage, transportation and bulk allocation of food grains, state governments, they hold the responsibility for distributing the food grains to the consumers through the established network of fair price shops or FPS. So we see that the center state relations, they also come into play here, and there needs to be a cooperative federalism which is very essential in order to ensure food security. So cooperative federalism becomes very important. And state governments, they are also responsible for operational responsibilities, including allocation and identification of families below the poverty line. So that we have discussed in the last class, how the Tendulkar Committee's report is used for identifying families below the poverty line, and the state government is responsible for that, for all these operational responsibilities of allocation and identification of families below poverty line, and also regarding the issue of ration cards and supervision and monitoring of the functioning of the fair price shops. Now, if we talk about certain suggestions to improve the current system of public distribution system, the following suggestions have been furnished. The first is that vigilance squad should be strengthened to detect any form of corruption. The second is personnel in charge of the department should be chosen locally. The third suggestion is margin of profit should be increased for honest business. And the fourth suggestion is that Food Corporation of India and other prominent agencies, they should provide quality food grains for distribution. The fifth suggestion says that frequent checks and raids, they should be conducted to eliminate bogus and duplicate ration cards. And also the Civil Supplies Corporation, it should open more fair price shops in rural areas. And the fair price dealers, they seldom display rate chart and quantity available in the blackboards in front of the shop. This should be enforced. And some social activists, they have suggested that pulse is an important source of protein. So besides rice and wheat, pulses and lentils should also be included in the public distribution system. And also the very poor, they should not be alienated owing to financial problems. Financial inclusiveness should be enforced with no room for them to be removed from receiving their entitlements. And this is also a constitutionally entrusted responsibility as well. Article 39 and Article 41, and as well as Article 38, which are part of the directive principles, they entrust the government with this responsibility. So the recent development of the Aadhaar and the UIDAI cards has taken up the challenge of solving the problem of identification and distribution of public distribution services along with direct cash transfers. So eliminating the middlemen, thereby preventing corruption and leakages in the system. So we are done with the fourth unit of this paper, which was pertaining to food security. Now we are going to discuss the fifth unit of this paper, which is pertaining to education. And education, it is basically a part of Sustainable Development Goals, which were adopted in the Paris Climate Summit of 2015. And they are to be achieved by the year 2030. And every nation has to achieve certain nationally determined contributions or intended nationally determined contributions, NDCs or INDCs. So every nation has set its own targets, and these goals, they have to be achieved by 2030. And the Sustainable Development Goal 4 is pertaining to education, which says that ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. So that is the fourth Sustainable Development Goal. And in this fifth unit, we are going to discuss that Sustainable Development Goal. And if we talk about the Constitution of India, there are multiple provisions which talk about education. So Article 21A, it has made right to education between the age of 6 to 14 years to be a fundamental right. This was done by the Atal Bihari Vajpayee government in the year 2002 through the 86th Amendment Act. And this 86th Amendment Act, it proved to be a watershed moment in ensuring right to education to the citizens and the children of India. So it amended Article 45 as well to include the right to education for children between the age of 6 to 14 years. And Article 45 is basically a part of directive principles. And also it included a new fundamental duty as well. So fundamental duties which are enumerated in Article 51A, that is Part 4A of the Constitution. They were brought in by the Swaran Singh on the recommendations of the Swaran Singh Committee report in 1976. So education, it has been a provision relating to education has been inserted in the fundamental duties as well. Article 51A clause K, which basically says that who is a parent or a guardian has to provide opportunities for education to his child, or as the case may be, ward between the age of 6 and 14 years. So right to education, it has not only been made a fundamental right, but it has also been made a fundamental duty as well through the 86th constitutional amendment of India, which was brought in 2002. And the interests of the vulnerable sections, the weaker sections, has also been ensured. So Article 45, it entrusts the government with the responsibility of ensuring the welfare and education of the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes population. And Article 335, it guarantees the rights of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe population regarding their representation in educational institutions and public offices. And Article 30, it says that religious minorities, they have the right to establish and administer educational institutions as well. So right to when we talk about right to education, the vulnerable sections of the population, the emphasis has been laid on their welfare as well. So these are some of the constitutional provisions that we have discussed regarding right to education in our country. So now let us discuss this sustainable development, this unit, that is unit 5, which is education, which is directly linked with the sustainable development goal, that is ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. So when schools closed for the outbreak of the coronavirus and went for online learning, teachers were not only worried about how they would make students learn without physical classrooms, they were also apprehensive over the fact that majority of the learners did not have access to basic technology. So this is where the issue of digital divide came into being. So a large section of the underprivileged and the underserved population of our country, they did not have access to basic technology, that is mobile phones or laptops or mobile data. They did not have access to that, especially in the rural areas, in the remote areas, in the tribal areas, in the 5th schedule, 6th schedule areas. So they did not have access to basic technology. So that is where the question of digital divide, it arose, and it became a major obstacle in India's education system. So and also in the fulfillment of the sustainable development goals by India. So that was a major obstacle. So the teaching community and policymakers, they perceived that the pandemic has not only widened, but it has deepened the gap between the poor and the rich. So it has basically increased inequalities. And as per a research study, a school teacher from Bihar reported that only 40 to 50% of the students have access to internet and laptops, and the rest do not have access to digital devices or internet. So in fact, the study found out that access to digital devices and reliable infrastructure, it continues to be the greatest challenge for students, especially from poor families. And apart from digital divide, which I've just discussed, children of migrated parents, child labor, preference to support the education of boy siblings of the girl child, etc., can be cited as reasons for disrupting learning. So the International Labour Organization as well, through its convention number 182, it has also, which is pertaining to worst forms of child labor, that they have also tried to curtail the spread of child labor and contain and eliminate child labor. And because that child labor has also proven to be a major obstacle in achieving the educational goals, which is there in the Sustainable Development Goal 4, that is ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education and promoting lifelong learning opportunities for all. So child labor has also proven to be a major obstacle in India's achievement of its nationally determined contribution of the Sustainable Development Goals, which are to be fulfilled by 2030. And in our constitution, Article 24, it says that children should not be employed in factories. Uh, so in the past, the Millennium Development Goals on education, they had indicated that every child, irrespective of gender, would receive primary education by 2015. And the Millennium Development Goal agenda also called for action to expand and improve early childhood care and education, and also increase of attendance percentage and free and good quality education for the children. So, for the young and old adults, the thrust areas included lifelong learning, adult literacy, gender equality, and provision for learning opportunities. So herein, Sustainable Development Goal 5 also comes into being, which basically it says that ensure gender justice and empower all women and girls. So, to illustrate, Millennium Development Goals on education was able to witness a slight increase in literacy from 87% in 2000 to 89% in 2012 among 15 to 25-year-old learners. So, at a global level in 2018, as per the United Nations, nearly 258 million children and youth were still out of school. So here we see that the Sustainable Development Goal 5 also becomes very important, that is achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. So gender equality has also been emphasized when we talk about promoting literacy. So the new education goal, which is propagated by the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, it made an attempt to reach out more comprehensively than the Millennium Development Goals, with an assertion that all girls and boys should get complete, free, equitable, and quality primary and secondary education. However, with the temporary closure of schools owing to the pandemic and children relying on caregivers at home, it has been stated that nearly 91% of poor children and youth, they were out of school, thus halting years of progress. So the United Nations Sustainable Development Report of 2021, it reports that the pandemic has wiped out 20 years of educational gains. And in this regard, the United Nations, it intends to intensify its work with governments across the globe to prioritize education both as a policy and practice, so as to provide free access to school education to all, including the vulnerable and the marginalized groups. So in this unit, we shall discuss the goals and opportunities that are set by the Sustainable Development Goal 4, that is, ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all, in the context of Indian education policy and initiatives. Now, if we discuss the targets of the Sustainable Development Goal 4, at the global level, the Sustainable Development Goal 4 has 10 associated targets that can be applied in the context of any country. So according to the United Nations, the last 3 targets, they depend on the means of implementation. So 4.1 of the Sustainable Development Goal 4, it says that ensure that all girls and boys, they get complete, free, equitable and quality primary and secondary education, leading to relevant and effective learning outcomes. It also, so 4.2 of Sustainable Development Goal 4, it talks about ensuring that all girls and boys have access to quality early childhood development care and pre-primary education, so that they are ready for primary education. So Article 39E of our Constitution, part of the directive principles, it also talks about similar things when it says that the state has to protect the children from moral and material abandonment. And Sustainable Development Goal 4.3, it talks about ensuring equal access for all women and men to affordable and quality technical, vocational, and tertiary education. And Sustainable Development Goal 4.4, it talks about letting the youths and adults possessing relevant skills, technical and vocational skills grow in number for employment, jobs, and entrepreneurship. Sustainable Development Goal 4.5 talks about eliminating gender disparities in education and ensuring equal access to all levels of education and vocational training for the vulnerable, including persons with disabilities, indigenous peoples, and children in the vulnerable situations. An article and Sustainable Development Goal 4.6, it asks the states to ensure that all youth and a substantial proportion of adults, both men and women, they achieve literacy and numeracy. So not only literacy but functional literacy, not just able to read and write, but to use that literacy, to use that that capability of literacy to perform certain functions, to enhance their the quality of their life. So Amartya Sen's capability approach, it comes into play here. And so and literacy, it also includes digital literacy and financial literacy as well. That is also very important aspect of literacy. And Sustainable Development Goal 4.7, it says that ensure that all learners acquire the knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development, including among others through education for sustainable development and sustainable lifestyles, human rights, gender equality, promotion of a culture of peace and non-violence, global citizenship, appreciation of cultural diversity, and of culture's contribution to sustainable development. So, if we talk about this Sustainable Development Goal 4.7 is also interlinked with Sustainable Development Goal 16, which talks about promoting peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, providing access to justice for all, and also about building effective, inclusive, and accountable institutions at all levels. And so that is also interlinked with this Sustainable Development Goal 4.7. And if we talk about cultural diversity and appreciation of cultural diversity and conservation of cultural diversity, Article 29 of the Constitution of India, which is a part of the fundamental rights, it gives the rights to linguistic groups, to cultural groups to protect their language, their culture, and their script. And the 8th schedule of our Constitution, it gives recognition to 22 languages as scheduled languages, and those languages are to be protected. And so cultural diversity and culture is also to be taken into account when we talk about Sustainable Development Goals relating to education. And 4.A of the Sustainable Development Goal 4, it says that by 2030, build and upgrade educational facilities that are child, disability, and gender sensitive, and also provide safe, non-violent, inclusive, and effective learning environments for all. And 4.B, it says that by 2020, substantially expand globally the number of scholarships available to developing countries, in particular least developed countries, small island developing states, and African countries for enrollment in higher education, including vocational training and information and communication technology, technical, engineering, and scientific programs in developed countries and other developing countries. And 4.C Sustainable Development Goals, it says that by 2030, substantially increase the supply of qualified teachers, including through international cooperation for teacher training in developing countries, especially least developed countries and small island developing states, or SIDS. And now we are going to discuss the National Education Policy of 2020. So the National Education Policy of 2020, it seeks to reflect the Sustainable Development Goal 4 goals on education. For achieving the Sustainable Development Goal targets, the policy emphasizes to reconfigure the entire education system. In anticipation to the growing demand for a skilled workforce, the NEP targets for a multidisciplinary orientation across sciences, social sciences, and humanities. For instance, the overwhelming impact of climate change, depletion of natural resources, natural and human-made disasters, pandemic, epidemic, etc., on economically and socially deprived sections of the society, they possess the need for multidisciplinary learning. So the National Education Policy, it points out that more than ever, children must be provided ample scope to shift from less content to more learning. In other words, National Education Policy, it seeks to develop certain skills in a learner like critical thinking, problem solving, creative thinking, innovation, etc., so as to become employment ready. Indeed, the National Education Policy, it envisions for equitable access to the highest quality of education for all learners regardless of social or economic background, so that none of the learners are excluded. And when we make education as inclusive as possible, it enables us to achieve an inclusive society where the members of the society would be able to self-organize and address the increasing development challenges of the nation. So, to achieve this, National Education Policy seeks to establish multidisciplinary institutions. For instance, the National Education Policy aims to groove professionals in the emerging areas like artificial intelligence, big data analysis, nanotechnology, neuroscience, biotechnology. So computer awareness, it seeks to enhance awareness in the fields of computers, robotics, biotechnology, nanotechnology. So, in fact, at the undergraduate level, the National Education Policy seeks to apply the above mentioned emerging areas in the fields of health, environment, and sustainable living. So, National Education Policy, it aims to enhance and groove professional in emerging areas like IT, information technology, space, computer, robotics, biotechnology, nanotechnology, artificial intelligence, big data analysis, neuroscience. And at the undergraduate level, the National Education Policy, it seeks to apply the above mentioned emerging areas in the fields of health, environment, and sustainable living, so that it enhances the employability of the learners. And the National Education Policy seeks to achieve the unachieved targets of previous policies like equity and access to quality education. And one of the milestones of elementary education in India is the enactment of the Right of Children to Free and Compulsory Education Act 2009, through which every child between the age 6 to 14 are to be enrolled in school. And through the Right of Children to Free and Compulsory Education Act, education has been made as a child's fundamental right, and denying this right would be an offense. And while establishing the thrust areas to include the marginalized, disadvantaged, and underrepresented groups, the National Education Policy strives to apply education as the pathway to achieve equality, economic, and social mobility. So, to strengthen this pathway, the National Education Policy, it looks upon the teachers as the core of the education reforms who would build the next generation of citizens. In fact, the National Education Policy is set to recruit the best and brightest people to enter the teaching professions at all levels. And from this policy, target of the National Education Policy, we can understand that India is on the road to achieve Sustainable Development Goal 4.C. And the prime goal of the schooling system is to ensure that children, especially from low-income families, they attend and complete school education. And for perspective, the gross enrollment ratio for grades 6 to 8 was 91%, whereas 9 to 10 and 11 to 12 stands at 79.3 and 56.5%. And the NSSO states that in India, nearly 3.22 crore children were out of school in the age group of 6 to 17 years. So this means the children who were school dropouts, they are to be brought back to school and make education free and accessible for all, including the dropout children. So schemes like Samagra Shiksha and Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, open distance learning, vocational education, adult education, they will go a long way in achieving this sustainable development goals, and using the help of NGOs and community-based organizations and through sensitization campaigns and by engaging various stakeholders and by forming school management committees through the role of the Department of School Education and Literacy, this goal is to be achieved. So thank you so much. Namaste.